My Oreo cookie chess pie recipe is going to be easy, delicious, and absolutely unforgettable. This dessert was inspired by pecan pie, which is basically just pecans in a melted butter, sugar, and egg custard. I started thinking, I wonder if it's possible to do the same thing but with chopped up Oreos. This pie is going to be super chocolatey, super rich, and combined with the slight butteriness of my homemade pie crust, is going to be awesome. Perfect for Thanksgiving or any day. As you can see, this pie doesn't have many ingredients. That's another thing. It's nice and simple. You will need one 9-inch pie crust. I'm using homemade, but you can use store-bought in the pie plate, and the pie crust should be raw. It is not cooked at all. We're just going to make a custard and pour it into the raw crust. Of course, you're going to need some Oreos. So you will need 7 ounces or about 199 grams of Oreos or some other chocolate sandwich cookies with vanilla cream filling. If you buy a package of cookies that's around 14 ounces, then you will need half of the package. I can't use these cookies whole, so I'm going to break them up into quarters. You're also going to need 1 stick of butter, 113 grams, 1 cup of light brown sugar, as I measured 240 grams, 2 large eggs, 1 tablespoon of, I'm using evaporated milk, but you can use whole milk. You could probably even use skim milk. This recipe has enough butter that I don't think it matters. 1 teaspoon of vanilla and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. So not many ingredients. Before I melt the butter, I am going to break up the Oreos. Like I said, I am going to break them up into probably quarters. I think that's good. I personally would do this by hand because I think that if you try to do this in a food processor, you run the risk of accidentally pulverizing them. So if you want them to be in bigger pieces, some of them I'm leaving it half like that. They don't have to be perfect, just approximately. If you want it to look rustic and homemade, just break them up into quarters. I just finished breaking up the Oreos. Like I said, the majority of them I broke up into fourths, but if some are just broken into half and some into 6 pieces, that's fine. Now I'm going to melt my butter in the microwave. Whenever you melt butter in the microwave, I highly suggest that you cover the bowl because sometimes the water in the butter, as it turns to steam, it can pop and it can get the inside of your microwave dirty. The stick of butter is melted. I'm preheating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So now let's make the custard filling for this Oreo cookie chess pie. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is pour everything into the bowl, but I think order is kind of important. So first I'm going to add the sugar, 1 cup of light brown sugar, but you could use white or a combination. I'm using light brown because I think brown sugar and chocolate go together well. I know this is quite a bit of sugar, so put it into a pie that has cookies. So if you want to use half a cup, you can, but honestly, I think you're going to need a good amount of sugar to help bulk up the pie. I added the sugar first to help bring down the temperature of the melted butter. Now the Oreos or other sandwich cookies. I'm gonna stir those. Try to make sure that everything is coated as much as possible. Don't want to stir these too much because I don't want the cookies to break apart. I want them to keep their shape for the most part. The tablespoon of evaporated milk or some other milk, vanilla, salt. Now I'm going to stir this together, give it a taste, and then I'm going to add in my eggs. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of instant coffee. I think that it's going to help to bring out the chocolate flavor and just balance the sweetness with everything else, because it is a pie of basically sugar with cookies. So I think it needs a little bit of bitterness just to balance everything out. Even though the Oreo cookie chess pie filling does have raw eggs, I tasted it and the teaspoon of instant coffee was definitely the right move. So here I have my unbaked pie shell. I'm just going to pour everything in. Sometimes when you are inventing a recipe, you have to adjust it. Don't be afraid to taste it and just go with your gut and say, oh, I think it needs something else. My Oreo cookie chess pie is now ready for the oven. I took my spoon and spread out the filling. It does look like the pie shell isn't quite full, but as the filling cooks, the eggs will make everything rise and expand, and it'll be a lot fuller when it's done. So this pie is going to go into a 350-degree oven. I'm guessing for 45 minutes. I'm going to put it on my pie plate just so that it's easier to take it in and out of the oven. I'll bring you back when it's done. I just pulled my Oreo cookie chess pie out of the oven. It was in at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered, for 45 minutes. Or 5. I love how you can see the bits of cookies on the top. Incredible. And it smells great too.
Earlier in the video, I compared this pie to a pecan pie with crushed Oreos instead of pecan pieces. And at first glance, I thought that was a really good way to describe this pie. I had never seen anyone on YouTube make a pie like this, so I was definitely very curious. And when I took the first bite, I knew that my Oreo cookie chess pie recipe was a big success because it was absolutely delicious. First off, I really liked the appearance. The brown sugar custard was a nice light shade of brown, and it set off the crushed Oreo pieces absolutely perfectly. Along with the golden brown crust, this was definitely inviting. Aesthetically, I really like seeing the larger chunks of Oreo cookies in the filling because they left no doubt as to what type of pie this was. I was actually surprised that the majority of the Oreo pieces were still pretty intact. I thought that more of them would have melted down in the oven. In terms of flavor, it was really good, and actually it was not as sweet as you would expect. That's because of the teaspoon of instant coffee. Originally, I wasn't going to add the instant coffee because I know that a lot of people here on the internet, they don't like to add coffee to things. But after I tried the filling, I knew it definitely needed something to balance out the sweetness. So if you don't like instant coffee, I would recommend adding 1 teaspoon of cocoa powder. And honestly, even though the coffee did tone down the sweetness, I think that it's critical in this recipe, not just because it tones down the sweetness, but because it makes the flavor more interesting. A lot of desserts are just sweet. They don't have any other flavor going on. That's why you need something else, like in this case, instant coffee, to help wake up your palate and let it know that there's more there than just sugar. And now that I'm showing you a close-up of the slice, you can see just how good it was. One thing that was interesting is that although the Oreo cookies on top seemed to be pretty intact, there was a layer in the middle where it looked like some of the smaller pieces of Oreos melted in with the brown sugar filling and created a chocolate layer. But overall, like I said, I was pretty surprised by just how many of the Oreo pieces kept their shape. And now from this angle, you can see the different layers, the whole Oreo cookies on top, then a layer in the middle where the Oreos kind of melted together and formed a chocolate layer, and then at the very bottom, an unmixed light brown sugar layer. Although I thought that this recipe was pretty much perfect, one thing I did want to point out is that just like with using whole pecans and pecan pie, I thought that the larger pieces of Oreos looked nice, but they were hard to cut. So you don't want to leave too many cookies in halves. You want to break them up into fourths, if not smaller pieces. Like I said, this pie was a big success, and even though it was delicious on its own, it was also good with some vanilla ice cream. I ate this pie room temperature, but I think it would be really good slightly warm with whipped cream, ice cream, or something like that. In fact, this recipe was such a success, I think I'm going to be trying other versions in the future with different types of cookies. I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out because I don't think I have ever seen anyone on YouTube make an Oreo pie like this one. Usually they are no bake and they have whipped topping, cream cheese, things like that. They're more of a cookies and cream pie. But this Oreo cookie chess pie recipe was very delicious and very easy to make. If you like chocolate, you like pie, and you're looking for an easy pie recipe for Thanksgiving, you should definitely consider giving this one a try. This recipe is a really good example of how being creative and how tasting things along the way can lead to great results. This was the final recipe in my 2022 Thanksgiving pie recipe. Of the 4 pies I did this year, I think that this one and the mango pie, the first one I did, were the best. So, like I said, if you're looking for an easy pie recipe for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or just any day, you should definitely consider this one. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.